This is Jean MacDonald of the new Midlife woman community, speaking to you on Radio Works World, created by the wonderful Marina Nani. Our passion is helping midlife women to find love by finding and loving themselves. And I'm the author of a soon-to-be-published book, Love, Sex and the Midlife Woman, your guide to empowering intimate relationships. Tonight's topic is, what makes men and women different? And I believe it's not their physical bodies, but their psychological energies. And these manifest themselves, and this is what makes them different, but equally valuable for our enjoyment of life and our social progress. Regrettably, in the last third of the last century, there was a widespread belief that if women wanted equality, they should behave like men in order to be treated like men. Some women masculinized themselves in order to fit with this expectation, but this has produced mixed results in their careers and unexpected consequences in their relationships. Many midlife women are now afraid to display their femininity in order not to appear weak or reduce their confidence and credibility. Now, Tony and Nicki V, the renowned intimate relationship coaches, examine what are the true natures of masculinity and femininity and how they manifest these different energies. These energies give men and women the ability to harmonize and achieve wonderful results, both in their relationships and in their work. Tony and Nicki are themselves brilliant examples of the power that comes from being in your right energy. But it wasn't always like that, as you will hear. So Tony and Nicki, welcome.
Hello.
Hello there.
So glad to see you, despite the possibility that you might have been in transit all over the country in your fast-track lifestyle. And what I'm going to do is a little bit more introduction I want to give, but what I'm going to say, I normally ask our guests to start by telling us the story of what they've done on their journey to get the expertise that they're talking to us about. But as I'm privileged to know some of your history, I would like to suggest you explain briefly the principles of male, female, masculine, feminine energy to us. And then you can illustrate it by telling your stories, if that's agreeable to you.
Okay, yes,
Definitely.
we can do it that way around, definitely. So, yeah, I think the first thing is to recognise that, there's no right or wrong about this. I think that a lot of people in today's world are considering women that are perhaps acting more in their masculine as being wrong in some way. We really don't buy into that. I think the better way to look at it is that ultimately they're just less conscious or less aware of themselves. So no right or wrong in that. And I think from our viewpoint, this is what we discovered. We discovered both of us at similar age. I think I was 47. Nicki was perhaps a year younger than me. She's a tad younger. Looks 10 years younger, of course. And basically we discovered this. This sort of was a really weird thing. I remember discovering it exactly the moment I discovered it myself. And I really wanted to run away from looking at it. And the realization was that actually I'd spent 47 years of my life in a more feminine state. And as I started to realize that and look at that closely, I could see the negative effect it had had throughout my life in terms of relationship. And Nicki, I was pretty much the complete antipathy of that. So we had to go on this sort of learning curve, which we don't profess to be easy. Principally, some people find it actually quite difficult to juggle with, just as we did. But actually, the time that it takes, the effort that it takes to really switch from running one set of habits and behaviours and maybe beliefs as well to a new set actually takes a lot of time and practice. But I can absolutely share that it's well worth the investment.
Yeah, I think that, if you're asking whether, what the philosophy is here, is as Tony said, we recognised, before we met each other, we recognised that in order to, definitely I can only speak for myself, but in order to be successful, I kind of thought I had to be, as you were saying earlier, more in my masculine. I was in a high corporate position, and I behaved very much in the way that many women think they need to behave in order to be successful, which is to be like men, as you said. I think that I realized, and the reason why I realized was that because it gave me so much pain in my private life, And I can think of the actual moment when I decided that this was absolutely important for me to learn about it, and learn not just about it from an intellectual way, or from a, we never decided in any way to, we never sat down and said, let's talk about masculine and feminine behavior, let's teach intimate relationships or whatever. I just had a moment when I broke up, funny enough, had somebody break up with me, which hadn't really happened to me before, because I tended to be in my masculine. I was sort of coming out of relationships going, okay, that man felt weak to me, so therefore didn't feel like the right kind of person. And then I was in another relationship, and the guy broke up with me, and I was a bit shocked about that. And then he said something which changed my life, which was, he said to me, because he was actually with someone else, we've been in a bit of a triangle, if you get what I mean, which is, very common, unfortunately, in this day and age. And he said, look, she needs me. I want to look after her. You don't need me. You're so strong, so self-sufficient. And I felt like screaming out, no, you don't understand. Underneath all this independent, strong, I don't need anybody or anything kind of woman is a little girl going, I'd love to be taken care of, and feeling but that didn't mean to say that I hadn't got this strength, because I think there's so much strength in feminine energy as there is in pure natural masculine energy. And I just really said to myself, okay, I need to learn how to be the real me, which is a woman and has got predominantly feminine energy rather than predominantly masculine energy. And therefore I decided that I'd learn about it, and then, as the rest is history, as that I found someone else, or he found me actually, in the way that he found me and said, and he'd already been on that journey of learning how to really be in his masculine energy, so that actually the two things, there's a great philosophy, comes from a fabulous man called Barry Long, who talks about divine love, and he says that when masculine and feminine energies come together, there's nothing you can kind of do about it. It's like a magnet.
Oh, yes.
Because it's really pure and it's really natural, and so our philosophy is really based on that. It's based on the fact that, we know that when we're in our natural essence, that actually, and we both got both, of course, when we do believe that in our past, Tony will perhaps explain more.
I hope, sorry, I'm just sorry to interrupt, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Tony will explain the fact that we have both energies potentially within us, yes. Not everybody knows that.
No, well, maybe you want to...
Yeah, I mean, it's just a rough general rule of thumb. There is a test. Nicki and me did the test, and we've done the test with hundreds of people, really to come to the realization that you don't need to do the test. Because, the stats are pretty interesting, in as much that, if you are a guy, then you are going to be about 70% on average masculine energy and about 30% feminine energy, and women are the exact opposite. Now, of course, it's not good to globalize and put everybody into the same bucket, so there are, variants of this, but as a general rule of thumb, if we were to take that as an average, it's a pretty good way to look at it.
Okay, fine. Well, because we've got some wonderful charts you've prepared, but before we do, would you like to tell your story?
Yeah, I think that the key thing really is ultimately to really understand that this masculine and feminine is not something that's at the intellectual level. So in learning it, so as we're going to share it tonight, you'll find some people are challenged by it because they're tending to look at it from a logical head viewpoint. So one of the things that happened when we sort of started to learn this stuff is really what we did is we took massive action to see if we could switch. So if, for example, you take myself, I'm sort of roughly that 70% male and 30% feminine energy. And what happened is I realized I was living in the 30%. So, most of my life I was using what we call our secondary energy as my core energy.
Right.
And Nicki was doing the opposite. So Nicki's, 30% male energy, and so she started using that as a driving energy, a driving force.
And can I just say something, because this is really important because it's so simple, is that the reason why, as Tony said, we mustn't look in any way and blame ourselves or blame society even, is that in the majority, over the last 13 years that we've been working with men and women in this subject, we've noticed that nearly, I can't think of anyone who hasn't realized that actually they have just followed one of their parents in their energy. And basically that can be either parents, or if someone hasn't lived with their parents, somebody who's had a big influence on their lives. And so basically, which is one of the philosophies that we believe in anyway, is that we just unconsciously copy somebody. So our sort of story really starts from very young, and it's still the same today, really, even though both our fathers have passed away. I was, very much like, and still I'm very much like my father, who was in very much masculine energy in his life, and Tony was very much like his father, who lived in mostly feminine energy. And so I think that's a really simple way of people understanding that we just completely unconsciously take that road, and of course it has. Sometimes, it can be great and we can get some success from it, which is what we've both done. We've had, so Tony's had relationships where he was in his feminine, and they weren't particularly fantastic, or as he might tell you, but they were, he did have relationships and had children and everything was great, right? But of course, I found that when being in my masculine energy, I got a lot of success financially, but it's not an all-round success thing when we're living outside our core energy.
Very good. Very nice and clear. Thank you. Can I just mention, because I didn't mention in the introduction, there was so much else to say, that for, I believe, about 5-6 years you ran the Happy House in Austria.
Yes.
I did.
And people came there, it was couples and singles. I went there as a single, and the amazing thing was was it 4 days, 5 days?
Yes.
To see people change once they had been guided back into the right balance and energy for them.
Yeah, I mean, once this sort of realization happens, and it is tough. Remember I said I literally wanted to run away when I came, confronted this, because it felt like it made my whole life wrong. So we do really understand when people first come to it, but if you can, hold on and make your way through it. And also we developed not only the table that we're going to show you, but we developed an exercise to prove that this is not something that's wrong with anybody. It's just something that innate deep within us is this sort of what we call core energy. And when you operate in your core energy, you operate in a different way than if you operate in your more secondary, or sometimes we call it your more emergency energy.
Yeah. Can I just sort of, for the benefit of our audience who don't necessarily, big you up a little bit, because I was going to mention again in the introduction, but again it wasn't appropriate then, the book Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, which John Gray wrote and published in 1992. And in my work with midlife women and other people, I frequently say to them, have you heard of Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus? Yes, they say, yes, I've read the book. But what follows from that is a kind of, well, I've read the book, but my life's still the same as it ever was. So clearly they didn't get the message. And it's difficult, for all the reasons you said, it's a difficult message. What I would say about your work in the subsequent years, and not particularly, although I know you've met John Gray, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah? But you've taken forward that basic thinking and produced all these tools and graphs to make it real for people so that they can embrace it, because lots of people read a book, say, oh yeah, that's very interesting, and maybe it changes their behavior for a week, but after that it drifts away. Whereas I would say that people who are exposed to your ideas and so forth are in no doubt.
Yeah, I think it's the way I would describe it is John's work is phenomenal. Look, he's written 18 books. He sold more personal development books than any other personal development author that's ever lived, which is fantastic. And his work's absolutely great. And some of it tends to go what would be what we call surface level. So I think what we've done is to delve a bit deeper. And I remember sharing the stage with John, and he sat in the front row, entranced by the way we delivered something that he doesn't really deliver at all. So we brought something new to the scene, and he absolutely loved it.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I think John's is it's brilliant work, and it's very much about how you communicate with each other when you're in a relationship that's not working between a man and a woman. So it's, I think it's kind of like communication skills, where ours is definitely, as we're saying this, this is actually based on David Dada's work, and it's based on his concept that it's very deep rooted, and that actually, as we're saying, it comes from childhood, and it comes from this thing that many humans do, all of us included, I'm sure, is that we somehow believe, there's this saying, we somehow believe that what we present to the world is somehow more attractive and more lovable than our real self. And I think that when we get back to our more natural style, and that is using both our masculine and our feminine energy, that actually we have a different experience of the world, and therefore a more experience of intimate relationships. And so that's twofold. It's not just about the masculine and feminine energy, it's about being authentic.
And I think, John, we have been accused by many in the press and stuff of being what they call old-fashioned. And when they say old-fashioned, they're talking 50s old-fashioned, 1950s old-fashioned, whereas I say, no, you don't understand. We're going back to prehistoric times here, because innate in the human being is this energy which has now become, for whatever reason, completely unconscious to most people until you bring it into their awareness, which is why when you're surrounded by people that are working with us, you notice that dramatic change in the way they behave and operate as they start to realize that this surface stuff of how do I communicate with a guy or a girl, I can do that, but it doesn't bring the longer term rewards. And I think that as you go through the history, whether you go from Victorian man, where man was not only dominant, but he was nasty dominant, aggressive, what I call red low energy dominant, which then led, as time goes by, women fought back, and rightly so, and then you go to the 20s, you've got the suffragettes, but of course this started the movement of women being, strong to beat off the male nastiness, so to speak. And then
they had to meet like with like.
Absolutely. And then of course you got to the war years, and women having to do lots of the heavy work that men were off fighting. But of course when you got to the Germaine Greer years, and the Ford factory strike, which I always think was a very pivotal point.
Indeed.
Women in the factory, withheld their labour, shall we say, for equal pay, which nobody's going to argue about. I think it's absolutely right, that men and women should have the same pay. But you see, these things are still surface level, whereas innate in us is this hidden part of us, unconscious to probably 99% of people, that a need that needs to be met, that if not met, brings you relationship challenges. So, as you look today at the tragic statistics of relationships, whether they be marriage statistics or people that have been in long-term relationships, the amount of children that are now living with a single parent, unbelievable numbers. And the discord that all of this lack of understanding has brought. And still you see people coming up with logical answers to practical, logical, surface answers to solve the problem, when actually our teaching, of course, says, look, you just need to go dig that little bit deeper into what's really going on here. And you find that, the masculine and feminine energies thing is an absolute awakener.
Yeah. No, so let me advertise that we have got a gift for the people on this show of two booklets that you both produced. do you want to tell the titles? You'll get more impact.
Yes, indeed. So we've written many short books, should we call them?
Yeah.
Books of practical understanding of this deeper teaching that we're sharing about. So there's 2 books to choose from. One written specifically for women, and one written specifically for men. And the one for women is called "I Do All the Work and He Does Nothing." So it really is a book for women that are in a relationship. But yes, a lot of women feel that, Nicki's probably got more to say about this than me, but really feel like they're putting so much more into the relationship than the man does.
Well, of course, we know, understand, and this is part of our teachings, what people would read about, which haven't really got time to go into in depth now, is, what we fully understand is that it seems like, women are taking, doing all the organising, doing everything in the marriage, doing everything in the relationship, and he does nothing. But of course, when you really learn about masculine and feminine energy, you recognise that if a woman keeps asking the man to do things, telling him to do things, he's going to do the absolute opposite because he's fed up and that's not the way he wants to live his life. And of course, then the women believe that, well, if I don't do it, he won't. And you get into this whole melee. And this sounds very sort of, I'm making it sound funny, but it's so many times we've had couples come to us, with the emotional and financial ramifications of them splitting up, with these kind of examples. I've had to do everything, I've had to book this, and he's going, well, like if she'd just leave it to me, I'd be fine. And so that's I Do All the Work and He Does Nothing, which is kind of quite an amusing title. It's actually about that.
Yeah.
The man's one is I Need More Sex.
Well.
Look, I think unfortunately men have got this sort of...
yet another ramification of it being the wrong way around.
Yes, men have got this sort of, what's the word when they're... I can't think of the word. They've got a reputation of just being all about wanting more sex. So, we just chose titles for the book that would make them jump off the shelf, so to speak. But, the as Nicki said, the ramifications of when the energies are the wrong way round is it will leave the man having much less intimacy than he'd otherwise like, which is why, it's said, there is no actual firm stat for this, but there is one lady, I've forgotten her name now, who did some serious work to see if she could find out how many relationships had infidelity in them. And her calculation,
conservative calculation,
was that 80% of all relationships have infidelity in them. Which is unbelievable, yeah.
Unbelievable, yes.
And we have a saying, which is whatever happens outside the bedroom will happen inside the bedroom. So that if there is if there's miscommunication, like we were saying with John Gray, or there is actually this imbalance somehow in the relationship, then it will filter through to the bedroom, and that will not be, neither of them will be having their needs met in that situation.
Yeah, so this book for the guide sort of explains why this is happening rather than how to get more sex.
Right, good. So shall we go on to the charts? Sorry?
It does.
What you say, Nicki?
Well, it helps both of them have more intimacy, is a nicer way of putting it.
Yes.
Right, okay, that's great. So, shall we go on to these wonderful charts that you've done? Because I think this will give people, and I'm anxious to see what they mean. So, shall I move on to, you tell me when to move?
Go to number one.
Right.
Now, what's happened with this is, I'll explain quickly how this works. So go to chart number one, which is the next slide down, John.
Yeah. Oh, is this not chart number one? All right.
Yeah, the first one, the next image on the PowerPoint, yeah?
Yeah, table 2, how we lose magnetic attraction.
I don't know, it's the one down from what you're showing quite right now. You've got slide 1 on it, it's on slide 2.
Right, so it's neither of these that you want.
Well, the one we're seeing at the moment is your intro slide.
Oh, right, I have moved on, but it may take a minute or two to appear.
Ah, right, okay. So anyway, on the slide numbers, it's slide number 2. Well, let's just tell you why we can't see it, what this is all about. So what we did in creating this is, firstly, when we first came across this and we were together and we were asked to talk about it, we didn't really have a model, and having a model really sometimes helps people to crystallise how it's all working for them. And so I said to Nicki, I just got a flip chart and drew a line across the middle and said, look, as we think about male and female energies, let's use some words that best describe male energy and female energy, or feminine energy. And so the words on the left table, the blue words at the top are the masculine words, and the words at the bottom, the pink words, are the feminine words. And in the middle there's some green words there, which are sort of, we call them more neutral.
I may not be on the right chart. I don't have any green words.
Yeah.
Full screen, I think. If you're sharing
I mean, if you can go to...
you just need to put his cursor on the second
Can you
one.
go to the second slide on the left-hand side?
If you put your
That
cursor
one's got some green.
So just arrow down, I think, is all you need to do, John.
Oh.
It's not on full screen, that's why you can't.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. You can still...
I'm on full screen. I'll escape.
Right, so just choose the arrow key to go down, yeah?
Right. So, can you see them?
Okay, so up one, up another, up another.
There's a delay.
Yeah, okay, I think that's the right one. It's going to come up any second. Should be on number 2. Okay.
I'm looking for one with some
You're
green.
hovering over the right one, so click that one now. There you go. Right.
Good, yeah, right, great. Okay, sorry.
Okay, good.
Oh,
So,
no.
see, on the left-hand side, we've got the male, what we call the masculine energy, and we've got 9 words that describe the masculine energy in blue. You'll see them as driven, led, powerful, focused, owning, purposeful, total strength, fearless, and dominance. Yeah.
And the left-hand side is all the male.
Yes. And then on the bottom, so if a man was in his masculine, he would be showing these behaviors or principles in his everyday behavior, and that would depict a more masculine man. Now, if he's doing nurturing, trusting, pleasing, acknowledging, letting go of control, allowing, non-demanding, accommodating, and surrendering, he would indeed be running a more feminine pattern. So what we've often done here is have cut all these words out.
Did you do it this week?
Have them in black. I didn't actually. Have them all in black and let people pick which words best depict them. And it's astounding when you do this. I did it with a gent the other day.
I was going to say, you didn't cut them out, but you did it with somebody this week, didn't you?
So I did it with a gent who's in serious relationship challenge, and he picked the 9 pink words as the words that represented him most accurately.
My God.
One masculine word. So then I said to him, okay, so let's choose the words that best describe your wife. So you'll notice on the right-hand side we've got the feminine, but the words are identical. And he picked all of the blue words that described his wife. So this demonstrated to him clearly that he's running a more feminine energy, she's running a more masculine energy, and they've been married 23 years. But they're never intimate. She's got 3 or had 3 other lovers in her time, and they've got to the end and filed for divorce. But he really does not want to not be with this person, and so I think it's very interesting just to consider. So if you go to the next table down, John.
This one?
Yeah, so this is what happens. So this is what happened to the guy. So you'll see here, if a man allows his woman to take control, she will lose trust and take control.
She won't feel safe.
And take control herself, yeah?
Yeah.
The result is that the man becomes a pleaser or lives in his own world without her. So this is what this guy was, perfect example of this. And honestly, I can't tell you, we always think that, you've heard the word epidemic, yeah?
Yeah.
The epidemic means that this is, everywhere. And certainly, if you go around the UK, you will see men operating like this all of the time. And not just a few. We're talking en masse. So we call it, and when we've travelled the world, honestly, the next word up from epidemic is called pandemic. And pretty much everywhere we've gone in the world, and the Western world certainly, we see this as a massive challenge, yeah? So if a woman is running in her masculine energy, she basically takes the male role, which means that she's really in control. But sadly, she disempowers her man when she does this. So the result of this is a lost connection, lost attraction, and relationship challenges. Now, we have to not make anybody wrong here. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the man going feminine is not because he's wrong in any way, or the women taking on a more masculine energy is not because she's wrong. It's partly because of, the modern, this sort of 150 years from Victorian time to current day equality type teaching. It's all head teaching, and this has led us to run these patterns and pass them on to each other down the generations. So if we go to the next table, John.
This one, hopefully it's the right one.
This is where two men get together. So we've got a woman man and a man man. And so, in other words, they're both trying to live in their masculine energy. And when we're at our seminars, we always say, so if a woman's in her masculine energy and she gets into conflict or challenge with a man, who's most likely to win? And the interesting answer is that the woman nearly always wins, because we always say, just for a bit of fun and easy to remember, is that the women have got Duracell batteries, the ones with the copper-coloured top.
Yeah.
They go on and on and on, and the men have only got ever-ready, so they don't last as long. They're a cheaper battery.
Yeah.
So the man has a couple of opportunities, a couple of things he can do when he knows he's losing. And if you ask any man, he'll basically say, generally speaking, he'll back off for the woman. But some men will go. You'll see there's this little word at the top of which says macho man.
Yes.
Our statistics say that about 10% of men will try and control the woman by using their physical or sort of verbal strength to take control of her. And this is where abuse comes from, really. Man, not being able to cope with a masculine woman and taking a higher ground and becoming aggressive, basically, either verbally or physically. And of course, this won't work. So a woman tending to try and take control through supremacy. But what we're really saying is that she's in fear, because remember, she's in her secondary emergency energy. The only reason she's really in masculine energy is ultimately because there's an element of fear that she's vulnerable and she needs to get her own safety and security. Nicki probably going to share a bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I think you've put it very nicely, actually. I think that when we said here a woman is attempting to take control, she's attempting to take control because she doesn't feel safe, and therefore it may look very unfeminine is probably the best words I can use, but actually it comes from her being fearful. And really, the feeling that there's this huge gap, there's this huge kind of gulf in front of her that she doesn't know what the future's going to hold, and therefore she goes into fear. She wasn't in fear, and she was feeling vulnerable, but safe, as it were. But because she goes into fear, she sees this massive gap. If the man is not going, it's okay, I've got it handled, kind of thing, then she will take that position herself. And we have don't know whether you remember doing an exercise when we had the man and the woman standing next to each other and imagining a dragon.
Yes.
And the modern day equivalent of dragons, of course, are like bills to pay, jobs and children, and whatever the problem that the world is throwing at them. And if the woman feels like the man is strong and is handling stuff, then she will stand, as we always say, like beside and behind him, rather than sort of like she's got to get her own her security. And when we do the exercise, we have men and women stand next to each other rather than her just sort of slightly behind, as you can see I am now, if you can see the camera. And when you're sort of next to each other, like like the modern day equality, that actually when the dragon comes, the woman is already adrenalized because she's feeling like she needs to protect herself. And then of course, we sort of quite humorously go, but of course in some situations the woman is going to jump in front of the man and protect him from any oncoming dragon, and of course this will lead to as it says, the man feeling very bad about himself because he's sort of allowed that to happen, and therefore in some of these cases he can be very angry about him. Well, the anger towards her will often come from the anger towards himself. So as we're saying, it's nobody's fault. It's just that the human being decides to, becomes adrenalized and does behavior when it gets into a sort of fight or flight situation. And in a fight or flight or in a fear-based situation, in most cases, we go into our secondary energy, a woman into her masculine and a man into his feminine. But in these cases, the man goes into his macho, which also often makes the woman even more scared, which, it's likely to happen. And then she will go, actually, we've probably got something on the next slide, she might go very, very low feminine, which is not healthy feminine, which is like, the victim of his behavior. And of course, this is when we get very dysfunctional, abusive relationships. This is where it all comes from.
Right.
So if we go to the next slide, John, I think the next one shows...
two pinks. Yes.
Trying to get it to move. Oh, I think because we're looking at an image. Let's see that.
I think if you arrow down, it'll work.
Yes, this one is rather frozen.
Slide the slider down, John. And
yeah, I'm trying to. It's
behind you, so.
Don't worry. Well, let me come out of that share and do another one and start from scratch.
Carry on talking about the two pinks.
Yeah. So when you've got two.
There we go. We are moving now. We're moving. So tell me the one you want. That one?
Not that one. The next one up.
That one.
So this is where you end up with basically a feminine man and a feminine woman in a relationship. Now, these relationships are actually very rare. The most common relationship today is where you've got a masculine woman and a feminine man. And this is where there's no polarity, so intimacy tends to fade away. And you can have long-term relationships, but they're not really very, people are not happy in these relationships.
Yeah,
but interestingly, when it's like the two blue, the two people in their masculine energy, that's often very volatile. As we said.
Very short.
Whereas the two pinks can be kind of like best friendsy.
Yes.
Or the man sort of, I always describe it because I lived in a relationship like this where it was like being in a relationship with your mother.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so it's got no intimacy to it, or it doesn't actually feel very right. But there's not much connection, so again, no intimacy. The only way that there really becomes intimacy is in the next diagram, and this is where longevity and happiness and fulfillment really happen, where we've got the man showing up. He's purposeful. He's in his masculine energy, and then he's magnetically attracted to his feminine opposite. This is where the divine love teachings come from, where it says if a man absolutely sits solid in his masculine, he will actually attract a feminine woman. So this is where it's a complete antipode of the first diagram, and this is this is what we had to learn. It's part of our story. And if people ask us, well, how long did it take you to stop doing one and start doing the other? And the honest truth is, it took about 18 months, a year to 18 months of consistently working on ourselves to remind ourselves, to become consistently aware and conscious of our actions and our language, the way we operated. And this is really what brought us much joy, to not only do it for ourselves and be an example, but to, of course, start to share and show others how to do this.
Yeah, and to tidy up on our stories, Tony actually was always working in his masculine energy, and his work has always found them very successful, but in his intimate relationships, it always took the second position, as it were, or the back seat, as it were. And I always found that, looking back, I was in my masculine energy in all parts of my life. It's like it was a double whammy. So I was doing that in my work and, and in my career and also in my relationships. But of course, what happened then as soon as Tony learnt this is he started to, behave in his masculine energy in a very healthy way. So on the teaching that we have on top of this is actually on top of this. If you like, before we teach people the difference between the masculine and feminine, we teach people what we call between the red and the green. And the red is, our fear-based energy, our fear, the thing that we do where we're going into our unconscious behavior, or we're copying somebody else because it's the way that we feel that we have to behave. Whereas when we go in the green, and you'll see we've written this in the green on this slide, It means that we're not in fear, and we're living the life we're meant to live. And so I just, want to just point out to midlife women, as it were, that this pink here, being in our feminine energy, does not mean we go into some sort of, Barbie doll, hopelessness, or this is like, I was being interviewed on the radio on the BBC at one point, and I only had about a 5-minute interview, and there was a journalist who was very challenging, and she said to me, so what you're saying, Nicki V, is that women should be passive and subservient. And I couldn't think of any better way to answer it than to say, well, look, do I sound passive and subservient? I mean, like, really? And it was the best way of me answering it, because I said, look, I feel more me now. I'm being me in my feminine, but it doesn't mean to say that I haven't got my personality and I haven't got my strengths. And I think it's the same with men.
Yeah, and I think that's where the journalist was just interpreted it straight through her head, through the logic, and that must mean, if you're going to go into this feminine state, it must mean that you're being subservient. And, that's 1950s stuff. And that is just not the case. This is a beautiful energy once you find it. And it does take a bit of discovering. But, when a man meets a woman in this beautiful, natural, feminine energy, it's a joy to behold, because it just feels real. It feels right.
And I just to tidy up as well on the whole bedroom thing, we come across many couples, married or not married, where their relationship in their intimacy feels like sort of, what we call sexual athletics. It's kind of like it's a give and takey kind of thing, and it's like, you do this to me, I do this to you. Whereas if you look at this chart here with the man, in healthy, strong, masculine energy, this is when we can really talk about him making love to a woman, because she is open. And in this word that we have at the bottom, which is very challenging to some women, is that she surrenders to him. And therefore, he's in more dominant but you have to remember, this is healthy dominance and healthy surrender. This is, this is a really healthy two people in their balanced energy between the two of them, so that they are, this is something that in lovemaking, this is what we've decided, what we teach needs to happen for it to last. Because otherwise, when it becomes something that's stimulating by some sort of, as we call it, sexual athletics, this is not a lasting thing. Whereas this difference between masculine and feminine, and this draw between the two of them, this is something that can last well into, we're expecting to last well into our old age.
Well, I think we're running out of time. So, can I just sum up with a phrase that I remember, and you reminded me? It is, and I've quoted in my book, which is, "There's a world of difference between having sex and making love."
Absolutely, absolutely, fantastic.
Yes.
And that seems to sum up so much what you've been saying. But I appreciate, and our audience too, that you've skimmed over the skim of the skim, as it were.
Yes.
But people, to get to know more about you and your ideas and start to, what we're offering is the complimentary copy of these 2 ebooks, which you talked about earlier. And what I'm going to do is, excuse the quick, I've escaped from that. I go back to here, I go to there, and I'm going to show that. So there we are. We've got a chat thing now. I'm already ready with the link, which I'm happy to say should be clickable. So people who are on this have got down. Oh no, I have to press enter. There we go. And that link now will take you to the form to get the books. And you can choose. Actually, what we discovered, Tony, is that although women might be interested in the women's one and vice versa, men and the men's one, if you want to have a peek at the other one, you can do, because you have a choice.
You can have both.
Yeah, very generous.
Yeah. And of course, there's an overlap between the two. It's brilliant how they come together.
Well, in the holistic approach, one has to be able to, I would suggest, to be able to see both sides.
Sure.
Sorry, you were agreeing with you.
Well, I think one of our biggest, as you say, we've kind of skimmed in and out of the surface anyway, is that, you know, this is about understanding massively when we work with couples, which we do often. You know, we go and live with them for a weekend or even longer, which is one of our things that we do. You know, we say, look, you know, you need to understand the differences between masculine and feminine energy, and I use those words more. This is not the difference between men and women, which is more that some of the other teachings are. There's a difference between masculine and feminine energy and needs, and your individual partner's needs. So, you know, that's so understanding your partner's needs, both whether their gender needs as well as their energy needs, as well as their individual needs. So I'm very privileged to have a Husband of the Year award, of course, who knows all my needs and meets them at a very, very high level. Therefore, I am, you know, wanting to meet his needs at a high level, which is another part of our teaching, which is how do you get to that point where life is full of joy rather than full of pain.
Well, you're an example, such a wonderful example of living what you teach, and I can only say I'm so delighted that you were willing to give some time this evening. Thank you for the charts, which we only managed to get up a few minutes before we started. That's my excuse covering myself. However, we got through them. And so I've got one more slide here, which is the outro slide. I don't know, how do I get back to that? Let's press that maybe. No. Sorry, it's a live show, folks. How did I do it before? No, I went down to here. There must be a faster way of getting through.
Yes,
there we go. So the last one, which is that one. This thing is stuck here. There we go. That's it. That's what I want to finish up on, with a lovely picture of you both, to say thank you for this evening, and to say to our audience, if you want to make more contact with Tony and Nicki, I have put their email address there, but if you elect to ask for the booklets, they will automatically, your name will automatically be put in the list, so they'll send you some of the wonderful things. Now, I'm right in saying that you're doing, oh yes, you're doing some programs in this area now, aren't you? So if these people connect to you and go on your list there, well, they can always ask for whatever they want.
Yes,
you've got masses of material on your website, haven't you?
Yes, if you go to TonyandNicki.com, there's lots of freebies there. So yes, to help yourself, take the time to learn this stuff and see the magic happen.
There's an emergency support button as well, which we love on our site.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing, isn't it? And the stories I've heard you tell about couples who were not only about to divorce but also about to kill each other, who you transformed within days.
Talking to them.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a letter on there, which I think you know.
Oh yes.
Which helps with the well, more than the communication, helps with the taking away all the sting that might be happening.
Right. Well, you are really a marvelous contribution to rectifying this awful problem of the imbalance that is so widespread. We like to think it's not as widespread as that, but I'm afraid the evidence seems to bear out that it is.
Badly.
And yet people are missing out on what can be a wonderful life and a wonderful relationship. So thank you once again, Tony and Nicki. And thank you once again, Marina, for organising this show. And I think that's it. If you want to say goodbye, I'll put up the slide with the share again for the address for anybody who's not got it.
So, thank you for having us, John. It's very appreciated. And thank you for helping spread the word.
I'll almost certainly want to ask you to come back and talk about other aspects of your work, because I know that there is so much more.
Indeed. Oh, we'd be happy to come back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye for
Thank
now.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye for now.